Hey everyone, Mrhappy here, and welcome to Mondays with Mrhappy, aka Mrhappy Mondays, a weekly Q&A show where you ask me questions and I answer them. Had a hell of a week, guys. I'm gonna be straight up with you. One of my hard drives that I compile a lot of footage on and has a lot of the stuff that I use to get my video work done crashed. It's gone. Unrecoverable at that. I did what I normally do to recover something with the hard drive, and it just gave in. So I'm set back on a lot of things, and I've got still the same makings of everything on the way. It shouldn't impact the actual patch videos coming out. It's going to impact Versus, which was already getting a little bit slower to complete because we've been in kind of a lull season for Final Fantasy XIV, and I've been taking that opportunity to play a bunch of other games, but I have another hard drive plugged in. This will be recorded on that one, and I'll fix everything sooner or later. Or not sooner or later, but, just not right this second. It's going to be a busy week for me this week as well. I'm not going to be around Tuesday or Wednesday. I'm actually going to LA because I have a few obligations that may or may not be tweeting about as I'm doing them over the course of the week. Thursday, I'll be up at, 2 or 3 a.m. for the live letter, and then we have State of the Realm this week. The next few State of the Realms are all planned out. We should have at least 6-7 shows minimum, probably more than that planned for the foreseeable future. And then we've got a few filler shows to slot in there. Not, bullshit shows like we do sometimes, like actual just not hot topic buttons, but, recent news and topics that have been being discussed by the community at that time. So at least that's going for me after this crazy week. But this week is going to be a busy one, so kind of like last week, don't expect it to be too many videos. I did have a Kakarot review in the works, as well as a Temtem video or two, but those are on the hard drive, so those have to be started over, so we'll see if we even get to those. I will say this, though, despite another slow week, we actually had quite a few new patrons pop up this week, which doesn't make any sense to me, because it's just not been a busy season for me on YouTube as of late. But yet we had Nicholas, who is a new elite sponsor. We had a new standard sponsor with Tyler, and we had a new premium sponsor with, where did they go on my list? I just lost the person. There we go, Despaw. So I don't know what I did in the last week to get 3 patrons to add onto the list that's already been scrolling, but thanks, because I don't deserve it after this last week, but it helps with my frustrations, that much is for certain. So with that, thank you to our patrons for supporting, even when we're not doing a crazy amount. It's completely optional. If you don't do it, don't worry about it. You don't have to think about it. You'll still get all the same content, all the same videos. It's all here. And then, of course, thanks to our patrons of darkness, Khuja Cross on Jenova and Kurenai Oni. You guys have been awesome. I say it every week, and I show your pictures every week, and it's awesome. So thanks, everyone. All the patrons of darkness, and of course, all of you who tune in and ask questions, which, well, let's see what kind of questions we got. Actually, to scroll through just quite a few outright comments. Some people calling me out on forgetting Naldenthal are 2 different gods. You're absolutely right. I feel like an idiot now reading it. But, F this makes me feel like an idiot all the time with lore. I saw one talking about cats don't like belly rubs. No, they don't. They're not like dogs. My girlfriend's always trying to give my cat belly rubs. When they show their belly, sometimes it's because they want to play, but they don't want you to touch them. Cats are weird, man. So this was the first question I actually found, and it's a simple one. Hashtag Mrhappy Mondays. When do you think Square Enix will make another MMO, if at all? And do you think we need a Final Fantasy MMO at all? You know what? I think it's an inevitable thing sometime way in the future. I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. The only way they make a new MMO is when 14 starts to decline into like Final Fantasy 11 status, where it can kind of be maintained. They can change it around so that it can just kind of be not really idle or dormant, but it doesn't need a whole lot of attention. But, we've seen World of Warcraft survive for all these years. And I know that's a topic, people call the latest expansion and, with Warcraft 3 and everything, like, survive's kind of the right term. But you know what I mean? Like, if a game keeps producing quality content, there's no reason to stop producing, and it earns money, there's no reason to stop producing for it. So I don't even think they'll go down the route of making something more like a Blade and Soul, like a full action MMO. But I won't say they won't make another one. I feel like that's ignorant. But I don't think it'll be anytime soon. Alright, next one. Hashtag Mrhappy Mondays. Hey there, Haps. Oh yeah, last person didn't say hi to me. They just wanted questions and answers. They were using me. I know what you said in the past, but want to hear your thoughts on. All right, sometimes these questions end up working out. What do you think they're going to do about healers? So I don't feel qualified to answer this, but I'll give it a shot. Alternate question. Also, by the way, that feels like it's more of a discussion than some of those questions. You know, what are your thoughts on this? But unfortunately, I don't feel super qualified because I'm not a healer. Alternate question, do you think that the time will ever be right for advanced jobs? Eventually, we hit a point where raising the level cap won't be a thing. What do you think? I think they'll always raise the level cap. They might eventually do a level cap squish like World of Warcraft is about to do, but I don't think there'll ever be a point where they stop raising the level cap. They really want you to have that extended lifespan for all the jobs, that point where you have to stop and understand the jobs by leveling them again, you know, for another 10 levels. They always are going to want that. I won't, again, this is another one of those, the second question here, where I can't ever say no because I'm not one of the developers. But I don't, they've openly stated the whole class to job system they kind of regret, because it caused a lot of problems that they seemingly have overcome up to this point in regards to balancing the jobs that are evolved off of the classes. Luckily, they've shown with Scholar and Summoner they are capable and have much better systems on the back end for adjusting jobs with the same skill on two different jobs. The same skill on two different jobs that come from the same class. It's a hell of a thing. But for that reason, I don't think they'd want to go down that route again to just enhance the jobs we have and make them advanced jobs. But who am I to say no? I mean, I've already openly stated that I think there's going to be a point where there's only one job per expansion, because the amount of work it takes to produce gear for all these different jobs, every expansion, every patch, is going to at some point feel like it's impossible to keep up. So I feel like so they don't have to keep sacrificing like pieces of gear, like, you know, old primal weapons and stuff like that, like things they used to develop. I feel like at some point they slow down on that front. So advanced jobs, it could technically alleviate the problem, but it is just a different coat of paint on the same thing. You're still advancing another X amount of levels. Just because you change the name, it doesn't really change. It changes the identity, it like enhances the identity, but it doesn't change the ultimate gameplay loop. So that's why I don't think they'll probably do it, because it's just confusing. They have class, job, advanced jobs for newer players especially. And for the first question, what are they going to do about healers? I don't think there is much to do. You know, I know more hardcore healers would argue, specifically with Astrologian or Scholar, that they'd like to see certain things tuned around. And I think that's fine. I think these individual job adjustments are perfectly okay. But when I play with healers, and I play with a lot of really high-end healers, you know, they just make what they're playing work. You know, sometimes they go, oh man, I wish I had Cure 3. Sometimes, you know, the Astro is really grateful to have the timing on the star and to the proper use of light speed. I've done content with, you know, all sorts of different jobs on the highest level. So I know that it's kind of arbitrary to ask for like a drastic amount of changes on the healers. So my question wouldn't be, what are they going to do about healers? My question is going to be, what's the next healer going to do? Because we're almost definitely getting another one in the next expansion. I don't see them not doing it. And so that's my question. And that's the only thing I can really ask, because again, as someone who doesn't heal high-end content himself, I don't feel qualified to answer this outside of, you know, observational tidbits. Next one, hashtag Mr. Happy Monday. Sup, Haps? How you doing? Because I'm doing alright. Good. You doing alright? Because I'm doing alright. I remember your ideas for potential Alex Ultimate. Oh, God, I love these ones. Before we knew anything, like going back in time and having to do mechanics the same way to avoid a time paradox. How do you like the mechanics, and did they more or less live up to your expectations, or what would you change given the opportunity? Because I was harassed a lot when it came to Alexander Ultimate, because I ended up I left the group I was in for Alex Ultimate because 3 other people had left and or been kicked before me, and then I left as the 4th person because I was like, you know, I just can't. The idea of doing like fresh prog with a new, like, entirely different half of a group, I was just like, you know what, I don't have the mental capacity or energy for it right now. And I got harassed a lot, like people thinking I was kicked from the group, people sending me DMs, people on whispers on Twitch. I got all sorts of harassment because people just thought I was like causing drama when all I was saying was it sucks to not do Alexander Ultimate. So when I cleared it, I didn't post it on YouTube, I streamed it on Twitch. I haven't posted any of my reclears. I haven't posted a thoughts video on it, which sucks, because I have a lot of thoughts on the Epic of Alexander after I've completed it and re-cleared it a bunch of times. I think it only barely meets the requirements for Ultimate in my eyes, but that might just be because I've done 3 Ultimates at this point. I think phases 1 and 2, killer awesome. There's more things they could have done, But man, every week those phases, I'm always like, death to a Dolph, somebody, somebody's screwing this up, somebody's screwing that. There's a fear. Every week there's a fear. Whereas like in previous ultimates in phase 1 and 2, like Garuda Ifrit, even Titan, as well as Twin Nail, I'm like, okay, well, these are just formalities. Like, we're not going to die on these fights, like when we're going in for reclears. So, because of that, there's just such intensity every week, I feel, in those first 2 phases. And every group, once they get together and start progging, getting past Brute Cruise is just a mountain to overcome. And Alexander, from that point on, it just kind of flows. Like, wormhole is hell for a lot of people to learn. The way I learn Final Fantasy XIV mechanics, I acknowledge and accept that wormhole has more permutations for how the fight will pan out than any other mechanic in the game, just because of limit cut alone, plus all the other things that are going on there. But the second half after Brute Cruise, I'm not very happy with. I think they're the kind of things that are really good on prog weeks. You know, they have the shock value, the heart, wormhole. You know, there's this great discovery aspect, but something is really lost in the follow-up weeks. And while Ultimate sort of had that with the big, oh my goodness, we've been doing it wrong the whole time, I found that Ultima, like the payoff for it to get to Ultima and Ultima every week, making sure to do the Garuda phases fight and how that pays off in Ultima, it was so much more, I guess, cohesively constructed. Whereas the last phase of Alexander Ultimate is no harder than a Savage encounter once you've done the heart mechanic in the previous phase and you can see everything, which is not that out of line for what they've done in the past. You know, the end phases are usually like big burns, like AoE's Tank Busters, and they do that here, but something just feels like it's missing in Alexander Ultimate, and it's not just from a mechanical standpoint. Thematically, story-wise, lore-wise, it's all super good, it's super cool, but something just feels like it's missing. And so I'm gonna take a little. I'm gonna accept that it's probably because I've grown expectations, because it's no longer the first Ultimate. It's no longer even the second Ultimate. It's the third one, and so there are things that are starting to fall into place with how they approach Ultimates, between gimmicks and the way that certain phases happen. And I guess I'm just hoping they change it up a little bit, because it's kind of like what they did in Savage last expansion, where every like 4th fight you could kind of just figure out what the formula was, because they had been designing them the same the whole time. And I think the next one, they need to break that up. They need to accept, even though it's a longer fight, it doesn't have to be this front-loaded, super difficult encounter with a back end that's very much just a tight DPS check with Tank Busters and room-wide AoEs, maybe something to dodge. And I hope that they realize that they're falling into patterns even with different developers here, and that they maybe need to just relax, deconstruct what it means to be Ultimate, and not just keep following the same formula over and over again. Alright, this one didn't have a hashtag, but I saw a question mark as I was scrolling through, so I figured it was probably a question. Hey, Happy, hopefully I'm not too late for Monday's stream, but I want to ask. I don't actually do, Monday's stream, because I don't stream myself recording this anymore. I used to, but I don't anymore. But so you're not too late. What do you think the minimum item level for the new raid will be, plus the gear that will drop? So fortunately, I might screw it up because I'm trying to answer on the spot without actually like looking at all the numbers, and you'd think I'd have this memorized by now. But the game follows a very formulaic formula for how to predict item levels coming out of content and what the minimum item level will be to enter said content. EX Primals, for example, are 15 item levels below the weapon reward. So, for example, we expect the weapon from this to be, I think item level 485, if I'm not mistaken, is what people expect it to be. I'm trying to think back to Byakuya, because Byakuya was 355, if I'm recalling, and we were all pretty surprised it was 5 item levels higher, but because of crafted gear, it made sense. So I think this one's supposed to be 45, so I think 470 is the expected minimum item level for the next EX Primal. But yeah, so it's usually 15 item levels below the weapon, I guess is the point I'm trying to make. Savage, go normal into Savage is always a 20 item level difference. So normal mode Eden verse will be 480, then Tombstone gear will be 490, and then Savage will be 500. As the rewards. And then I think it's 25 item levels for normal below. So if it's 480, it has a 455. No, that doesn't sound right. Yeah, see, here's the thing. I just don't remember them all like on the spot. But there's basically a formula for all this stuff that makes it so literally every single patch, we already know the answer. And it's been that way for like 3 or 4 years. So here, what I would recommend doing, because I can't remember it right now, look at the minimum item level for Eden Tier 1 normal, Eden's Gate. Look at what the minimum item level to enter is, and then subtract that from what the item level that drops is, which is 450 for the normal. And that'll tell you what the item level gap is between minimum and reward for every tier of normal mode raids ever, until they show some sort of propensity to change it. And then the Savage, it doesn't really matter as much. That one's always like, that one always caps out at like 480. It's like the third and fourth fights are like the item level that normal mode drops, and the two previous fights are like 5 and 10 item levels below it. I think that's how they still do it, but it's been a while since I've looked. So again, there's just, look at the way everything is now, look at what the item level they recommend for everything is, the minimums, and then look at the rewards, and that pattern will be the same every time. Also, I see here, your birthday's on February 6th, so during the live letter, we should have a cupcake. She's going to be sleeping. I might have a cupcake. Maybe. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hello, Mr. Happy. How are you? Well, my hard drive was destroyed, and it really sucks. So I'm going to answer the question. Hi. Hello. Welcome. Long-time watcher, first-time asker, so first-time bonus of Wagyu. Oh, me. Dude, I can't have Wagyu with a beard like this. It's too monstrous. It's too valuable and classy for me to eat it looking like this. So I need a beard trim and a haircut before I do that. But thank you. Do you have an Realm-Reborn Primal you're most looking forward to seeing in the Eden Raid series? I really want Eden's verse specifically to end with Shiva. Regardless of what happens in the previous three. Obviously, we know Ramuh, the Thunder Plains, is there, and where I have my own expectations for that. I want Shiva to be the last boss, because I think that Shiva has the greatest emotional attachment for how we decipher what she looks like. Obviously, Isael, Iceheart, Shiva, just three different identities that have all been attributed to this previous echo-gifted individual. The story with Hraesvelgr, the dragons. There's so much emotion packed in that the Warrior of Light's interpretation of Shiva should be the most interesting one. Ramuh, yes, he was this actually benevolent and wise primal who wasn't a natural force of destruction, but his very existence was a force of destruction. Garuda, a raving lunatic, which you could argue would make a pretty interesting final fight as well, but not a very deeper emotional character or set piece that we had for them prior. The most epic thing about them is running into the Ultima weapon when we fought Garuda normal mode, and that's not going to attribute that to how we remember Garuda normal, most likely. I'd also a reminder, Final Fantasy 15 not canon to Final Fantasy 14. Those type of events aren't canon, so I wouldn't expect any sort of adjustment for the appearance to the male Garuda that we fight from Final Fantasy 15. And then as for what's the last one on that list? Ifrit. See, Ifrit would be really cool, but again, he's just like, he's the quintessential bad guy of like generic, like beast-like bad guy. He's our introduction to primals. And while I suppose our memory of him initially tempering those individuals could play an interesting part, I just think all that pales in comparison to Shiva and our journey with Isael and Iceheart. Our final memory of Iceheart and Shiva is her standing, or I guess, well, flying. You know, she was trying to, you know, give us cover and protect us when we were trying to, you know, safely land in Azys Lla. And she also slowed down the Garlands. Like, there's just so much. I want it to be Shiva. Shiva's easily the one I'm looking forward to most. On the flip side of that question, hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays, how you doing? I'm doing alright. You doing alright? I'm doing alright. Just curious which of the upcoming Primal remix themes you're looking forward to most. It's like a continuation of the last one. I think it's still Shiva. Ifrit, you know, the Primals version of Ifrit's pretty cool. The Primals versions of Garuda is fantastic, but it's also very vanilla in that it very much just feels like the original song done with a rock arrangement. Whereas there's some primal themes that I feel like really shine, where it's like, it feels like something brand new. Specifically Leviathan and Eden's theme Leviathan and Titan's theme in Eden's Gate. So I think Shiva, because I'm actually not a big fan of Phase 2 Shiva. I'm an Oblivion fan. I love the first phase of Shiva's theme. Is that Oblivion, or is that something? Is that the other. I can't remember if the first phase is Oblivion or the second phase is Oblivion. I think the first phase is something else. I think second phase is Oblivion. I like the first phase theme for Shiva a lot more. And I feel like there's something they can really do to intensify that. But again, something super emotional. Something almost answers, like, not that high a quality, but that kind of emotion for remembering and needing to re-slay this person that we spent so much time with. So Shiva's the answer for both. Shiva is the one I want to as 8 remixes, everything. I want it. All right, another one, hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey there, Haps, you doing all right? I'm doing all right. I'm doing all right. You doing all right? I'm doing all right. So my question this time is in regards to Eden. A lot of Eden questions, which makes sense since 5.2 is coming up. Since we were basically summoning primals of different elements to redistribute ether in the empty, when it comes time for the dark element, do you think they will use Odin since he's underused? So just to be clear, dark isn't an element in Final Fantasy's world. It is an aspect. There's umbral aspect and there's astral aspects. And, our entire understanding of those aspects has been turned on its head. But I do agree, because Dark Ether does actually rapidly expand. It basically is like, it massively tries to consume or spread. Whereas Umbral Ether, the ether we're dealing with in the first, it stagnates everything's flow of ether. So I think that using something that's aspected towards darkness and utilizing that astral affinity to spread everything more might be used specifically for the sake of what's it called? Of taking this, like, one area that we've concentrated in Eden and really, like, getting it out there to repopulate everything with all of its ether. I don't think Odin will have anything to do with it. I actually think it'd be cool to have Odin. I've spoken on Odin and Bahamut potentially making appearances in Eden in the past, just because of their affiliation with the dark aspect throughout the history, the Umbral Calamity, as well as Odin's, what we perceive as Odin's affinity. But it's worth stating that Odin's a bit of an interesting case, because Odin is a primal that was created by another primal, Eureka. The weapon Zantetsuken is the actual primal. And I don't think we would use Odin. I don't think the Warrior of Light would think to perceive Odin when perceiving darkness, because I believe our 7th Umbral Calamity, the one caused by Bahamut, was a dark aspected Umbral Calamity. If I'm misremembering that, I know you guys will call me out on that. But if that's, so the case, I feel like he becomes the prime candidate, a remix of Bahamut of some kind. I know a lot of us are kind of tired of that, but I also still wouldn't be surprised to see it. I don't think we'll see Odin in Eden's verse or in the final Eden tier at all. And I don't think we'll really use Odin again. I think now that we've dealt with Eureka, we've taken care of a few of the weapons. We've taken care of Raiden, Eureka itself, Absolute Virtue. We've just taken care of what was in the Baldesion arsenal. Really, the Zantetsuken is the only remaining piece that's kind of out in the wild. And I just have a feeling it's not going to be so simple that we're just going to quell this threat. I just don't think it's going to come back into play, if not soon, ever, to be honest. Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey there, Haps. You got a lot of space between your hashtags and your hey there's and your fun question for the week for me. What has been your biggest Hap Jesus, Sly Jesus moments that have come to pass? Man, what was Sly? Sly had a really good one that was recent. Oh, I can't remember what it was, though. And I don't even see, here's the thing. Sly always calls my moments Hap Jesus on State of the Realm, when it's really not. Square Enix just got really predictable for a long period of time. If I had to take a Hap Jesus credit, it would be on Dancer wielding chakrams, which it was less surprising than people thought, because in Final Fantasy XI, their level 40 artifact weapon, even though most people remember them for using daggers, or some people use swords or hand-to-hand in the early levels, their artifact weapon was a throwing chakram. And I'm like, they're 100% just going to do throwing chakrams because it was like that in 11. And that's not the only game where dancers have used chakrams, but I saw it. I could just, like, it's going to happen. Sure enough. So I'll take that as my Hap Jesus. Man, Slice might have been no male Vieira, but I think at some point he started to just agree with me. He was like, but I felt like there was always a creeping suspicion. But something in 5.x, I know Sly had some sort of big, like, I predicted it moment in 5.x, and I don't know what it was. So if I just can't remember right now. Somebody might remember it in the comment section. You guys give it a shot at answering it. All right, so we got another one here. Hashtag Mrhappy Mondays. Hey again, hello. So it's again, welcome back. This is sort of a follow-up question to the one you read last week. Feel free to skip it if you'd like the same. If you'd want it as it's the same question but with more clarity. Okay. I guess I didn't structure my question very well and just fanboyed, but I was more curious. Less than a Star Ocean collab. Oh, yeah. I was pretty harsh on that answer last week. My apologies. What do you think about them tackling fun, non-canon stories like the meta of SO3? I'm not a fan of non-canon stories. I guess I also could have been much more clear last week because collaborations are... I'm not as excited about them. Sometimes the content around them can be very interesting, but I always want things to expand Hydaelyn and Eorzea and just kind of the world they've established. And there's so many things we still have question marks about that putting forth effort on non-canon stories, even if they're fun, is less interesting to me, like what you presented last week in Star Ocean 3. So that's kind of just my opinion on collabs overall. Like, I really like the Monster Hunter one, but it's not canon to Final Fantasy XIV. It's just neat to see how they did it. And for that sake, sometimes it is worth doing the little non-canon stories. As long as you enjoy them and you have fun, that's all that matters. But I'm always less inclined to desire those versus something that expands Final Fantasy XIV in the world. And, you know, speaking to your second question here, that Final Fantasy XIV is just a small part of a bigger universe, we already kind of know that to be the truth, just not kind of on a Star Ocean level thing. We know that Omega and Midgardsorm are not residents of Hydaelyn, are not residents of the Source specifically, or any of the other shards. They flew from other planets. I mean, Omega's entire purpose of trying to grow stronger was so he could go home. He wanted to understand human emotion, gain more power. Anything that he could perceive as making him strong enough to make a return journey, is a big thing. And that's got to be a hell of a distance for him for what he is to not feel like he can, you know, survive the conditions of space long enough to do that a second time. So there is actually room for us to expand off of our planet at some point in Final Fantasy XIV. It just depends on how they want to build things like the Dragon Shard and wherever Omega was from. And I think that there is room for stuff like that. All right, next one. Hashtag Mrhappy Mondays. Hi. Hello. You're trying to make up for the people who don't say hi. Long time oldie viewer. Welcome back. Second time asker, but simple questions. I like those. What do you do other than game? Movies, books, and what music do you like? Movies, I'd say I watch some movies, but I mostly like to learn about movies being made. One of my favorite things I used to do is when I was young, I'd get the DVDs for, you know, movies that I'd seen or even just heard of, and I'd always, if the option was there, listen to them with director's commentary. I find absorbing people's creative processes and understanding, you know, what led to something, whether it be a funny story or an interesting look at a scene and how they approached it, I find it fascinating. And I watched, you know, probably, you know, not like this mind-breaking director, but Kevin Smith movies, you know, like Clerks and Jay and Silent Bob and all that. I love listening to him talk about his experiences specifically. So when it comes to movies, I would say I actually don't consume a whole lot of movies, but I do watch them occasionally, but I love listening to director commentary. I find it to be so interesting. Books, nah, man, I don't read at all. I'm one of those, you know, I'm that uncultured swine. I could read like a 40-page article on some game, but you throw a book in my face, I get like 4 pages in and be like, nah, dog. What music do I like? Hip hop, R&B, techno, house. Realistically, I'd say I can listen to anything. I just have to think it's good. Like, there are some heavy metal songs that I can enjoy. Plenty of rock songs that are out there, whether they be classics or stuff that's newer age. But I don't often pursue new music. So often I end up going back to like hip hop I grew up with, rap I grew up with, you know, techno and house, you know, random mixes of songs I couldn't even name. And then, you know, video game music, which kind of falls in its own category. A video game music could be like this edgy rock or this techno house, but it still is almost always distinctly video game music. And so, I'd say that the only thing I don't listen to very much, I'd say, is country, and I don't even dislike it, but for me, a lot of the songs are kind of samey, so they're not actually, I'm not interested in hearing another new song. I can always check all the beats, tick all the boxes with country, and I very rarely find things that are interesting or you know, stories that I'm interested in following throughout the song. They're there, but they all just feel so samey to me. So other than game, I mean, I mostly work. Food is a big passion, I'd say. I don't really like make any food content on the channel, but if you come over to my Twitch stream, I'm always talking about these like interesting plates that I've had at these restaurants. And not even like fancy, but just different. You know, I'm always trying new things whenever I'm given the opportunity. Because, you know, that's the spice of life. You know, enjoying good food, enjoying good company, and enjoying a hobby or two. But I game so much. I used to not game outside of streaming a whole lot because it was just so much. More recently, I found myself doing it, just kind of re-falling in love with just, you know, sitting down and playing a few video games. It's nice. Oh my god, there's so much text. I wonder, so I can already see it's a second time asker, so I'm wondering, well, now I've read the whole thing on the screen, but no one, I might have just skipped over because there's just so much text. Hashtag Mrhappy Monday. Just one day. Hey, Apps, how you doing? We'll see after. This is a lot of dialogue, man. We're about to see what's going on with this question. So, physical role perception. Ever since a Bard Lost Foe Requiem and Refresh was removed, the role's been looked down upon since I see many PFs take the wording of popular raiders literally and replace range slot with a second caster. That's not what any major raider says. Most raiders say instead of running double melee, you run double caster nowadays. A lot of people still prefer to have one of every role. But I will say this, the ranged role, I think it'll probably get a few more buffs in the next patch. Only because once they buff Red Mage, then the caster role starts to look problematic. See, when it was just Black Mage that was dominating, and if you took 2 Black Mages, you could theoretically, with high enough performance, outparse, you know, a double, you know, a one range, one caster comp and just do away with the 1% increase. That was like, okay, but it's only Black Mage and only at the right skill levels, and like there was a lot of factors that needed to line up. When Summoner got buffed, it got scarier because now it was like, well, both Black Mage and Summoner are insanely strong. But you know what would make them stronger? If this ranged physical was here, giving those extra casters the 1%, and the melee is still going to be killing it. So that's why generally people have gone towards double caster, but they've still kept a range and a melee because it just makes sense. Because if casters are so strong, then you want that 1% on it. Otherwise, it just makes sense to go 3 if that's going to be the case. You know what I mean? And I ain't doing that. So I will say that their perception's been kind of weird because it's not wrong per se, but it's kind of the way anyone perceives it is irrelevant because those kind of statements only matter at a very small percentage of people's performance. The average party finder, I'm just gonna say it, is too shit to care about anything but beating the boss. That's the bottom line truth. Whether it be a farm party, whether it be a clear party, whether it be a learning party, whether it be like it's just such an irrelevant factor that people take as trickle down information and then spread amongst each other. But once Red Mage gets buffed, you may hear more people saying things like this, because that's a genuine concern. I do think that the ranged physical role probably needs a little bit more in the way of personal DPS. Machinist especially. Machinist, there's no excuse. I don't know why they haven't given it better numbers to make up for the fact it has less utility than the rest of the ranged. And also that the ranged role is, you know, kind of just falling into this place of weirdness in that it's not being treated like everything else when it's also had some of its tools taken away, like you've stated. But so many I've seen. Here's the thing, I don't party finder, but almost everyone I talk to doesn't want to get rid of the ranged anymore. They want to get rid of one of the melee because it's a comparable DPS amount and they can still benefit from the extra 1% that the ranged physical role is bringing. Plus, Dancer and Bard actually offer pretty decent art DPS increases overall, even if it's not always to the same par that like a Black Mage or Summoner are overall putting out. So that's what I've seen more, but I also don't look at the party finder, which is never a good place to look. It's also the most important place to analyze how people are reacting, but it's so not important. So that's, I don't know if I really answered it, but I read it and I approached it, and you'll tell me whether it was good enough or not. Alright, next one, hashtag Mrhappy Mondays. Hey, Happy, how you doing? I'm doing alright. You doing alright? I'm doing alright. Well, we've been making a video follow up on the Ascians lore you made before. We've had a lot more info on the lore now. So I have not answered this before. It's a very simple question. I've shied away from lore videos for the most part, only because I feel like I missed too many details. And I think that's apparent. You can even see like the way I answer some of the questions in Mondays with Mr. Happy. I'm like, I don't have this like treasure trove of knowledge. I have very high level understanding of everything. It's very surface level understanding of everything. So when there's little tidbits, you know, that video is based entirely on the notion that the Ascians and the Evolution Primals, or the aspects, the different aspects for the different espers, were their names overlapped, and if there was some sort of connection between the two. I think at this point it's almost safe to say there wasn't. So there's not really much of a follow-up to that, but we do know a lot more about them. So I think that for lore on my channel, it'll probably stick specifically to spoiler casts for spoiler cast and AR Zivias, which, by the way, I think our 5.0 spoiler cast has like almost 60,000 views, which, you know, is great. I'm glad to see people were really into us talking about the lore of 5.0, the story that had taken place. But it'll probably stay concentrated to that, because then we have an expert on the matter. We have chat who has a treasure trove of knowledge and information that they want to discuss, you know, on the right side of the screen. And it's just a much better way of approaching the lore with multiple perspectives, instead of one guy who likes it, but I don't have that super deep knowledge or understanding or background without extensive Google searching, which, you know, while it's nice, it kind of feels like a formality just to make the video versus an actual compilation of things that I've noticed or knowledge I've acquired. Alright, next one. Hashtag Mr. Happy Monday. Hashtag hope you're doing well. Hey, look, you getting that out of the way? Hey, Happy, how are you? Hope I'm doing well. I'm doing alright. You doing alright? I'm doing alright. I wanted to say thank you. I've been going through a hard time recently, and you and your content have helped me get back on the straight and narrow. I'm glad that I've been able to help you with that. So, a lot of people know, just about 2 years ago, it's coming up next month in March, I lost my father. And since then, I've had plenty of fits on YouTube where, I'm done with a stream for the day, and I literally can't bring myself to look at a screen or repeat the same line over and over again, or write down a script. You know, sometimes it's just tough, and sometimes, you know, what do I need to do? I go to YouTube and I, you know, consume some content. I go to Twitch and I hang out with some people that I don't get to, you know, check out on Twitch as often anymore, because most of the time I was working. So I totally know where you're coming from with that. I do the same thing, and I'm glad I was able to be a part of the process with that. And, you know, it just make sure you take it easy when those moments come, because they'll hit you, and they'll hit you hard. But if you handle it right, you'll always bounce back, and there's always something to look forward to. So 2 quick questions. One, what makes your patrons of light and dark so special? So that is strictly a monetary thing. I don't publicize it, because as I state pretty much at the beginning of every Mondays with Mr. Happy, where, you know, one of the 2 shoutouts for the week happens, it's not something I openly encourage. I'm going to create content on YouTube regardless of Patreon. It is not the determining factor. But the way YouTube's treated my content over the years, you know, it's fluctuated so much that the inconsistency can make it a little bit rough. You know, even if I pour hours and hours and days with less sleep into something, you know, I could walk away with barely anything on YouTube at times. And that's just kind of how it is. And that's why sometimes I'll also say, oh, you know, things are better on YouTube right now. Or, you know, things have been really good lately. I like to let the patrons know that while they're there, it's optional. But that I'll still be there whether or not they're there. So they're making a completely conscious decision on their part. They don't have to feel bad if they have to take it away. It doesn't change my perspective of anything. I don't look at it and go, oh, what? No. It's just there as an option if you really enjoy the YouTube channel. And when I don't produce a lot of content like it's been for the last few weeks, I'm not surprised when I see someone adjust or remove, or it doesn't matter. It doesn't bother me, because they're just there of their own volition anyway, and I don't want them to feel like they're strapped in, like they need to do that. I get apology messages all the time. So with the patrons of Light and Darkness, it's just a monetary tier above everyone else that I don't advertise, because I'm not trying to be like, oh, hey, do you want to become a patron of Darkness? Do this. It's like, no, because I don't create a lot of content on Patreon. So these people have messaged me and contacted me specifically and said, hey, I want to do this. I'm going to do this. And that's kind of just how the conversation goes. And I go, okay. Maybe they ask exactly what the other patrons of Darkness are doing, and I'll go, well, this is that patron of Darkness, what that patron of Darkness is doing, and they'll go like this. So it's very, very tentative, I'd suppose. And it's just that they've done so much for the channel that they they get that little extra shout out there at the beginning of the episode and on State of the Realm. To remember back to A Realm Reborn and leveling for the first time and how dangerous the world seemed with mobs that were 20 levels higher than me. Now in Shadowbringers 2 expansions, I feel the open world is somewhat stale. It doesn't feel like there's diversity or danger. Do you think it's something they could fix in the future? That's what exploration zones will be for pretty much every time, I feel. And that's something that when you have a 50 level range in an expansion and you can go wherever you want, really what you're saying is no surprise. Because when you go to a new expansion, monsters are going to be at most 9 to 10 levels higher than you. And so, because by virtue, that's the highest level that's available in the game. And the open world isn't supposed to be this constantly threatening endeavor that you're supposed to go over. It's a means to an end. It's a set piece, almost, where they do hunts, where they usher you through side quests and lore and the main story. And so there's really no surprise that you feel that way, and I don't think they'll do anything about it outside of, next expansion, there will be new hunts, and people always die to hunts because nobody pays attention to mechanics. But exploration zones, on the other hand, will more likely capture what you've described here, like Eureka. When we go to the area around Bajda Citadel, I imagine it'll be very similar to this. I should go get some water, but I'm going to try to truck through, because, oh my god, it's been so many minutes I've done recording. We'll see how many more I'm going to do. But hashtag Mr. Happy Monday. Sorry in advance for the wall of text. Hey, Haps, you doing all right? I'm doing all right. You doing all right? I'm doing all right. I'm relatively new to the channel. Wait, sorry for the wall of text. This is all the text. This isn't a wall. This is like a fence. It's not even a fence. It's like one picket. Yeah, all right. Relatively new to the channel. That was a mistake. And I've recently upgraded from free trial to the full version of A Realm Reborn. I'm waiting for your Let's Play series with Healer Happy, and it's been really... Oh, I've been watching. Really helps me in regard to dungeons. Just wondering why you stopped and if you have plans to do similar thing for new content. There was a point with Healer Happy where I was just kind of going through the motions, and it stopped being a learning process. Because I had already done guides on a bunch of the dungeons I was about to go through. I had already talked about them in so many different videos. I talk about them every day on stream, and Healer Happy just felt like a chore. Really, like, oh, I got 2 more levels to go before this next dungeon. Do I do a let's play of me just running around doing quests? Ugh. But then if I don't do that, that means I gotta go spend an hour or 2 to then make a video of me doing a dungeon I've already made a video guide for. I'd say there's still some learning to be had, and I'd say especially because things have changed since I made those videos. There's some information that no longer functions the way that it did. You can even go back to, I had cleric stance back when I started that series, just to name one thing. But it just became so much of a chore. And I feel like tackling new player videos directly as new player videos and not in this Let's Play series is more the route I'm comfortable going in the future, from when the Healer Happy series ends going into the first few Stormblood dungeons. All right, and this is the last question. I took the time to answer a different question by typing it out. I didn't really have an answer for the first. They asked me 2 questions. I didn't really have an answer for the first one, and I typed them an answer for the second one. But this is going to be the last question for this one, because it's the last question. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. With White Mage ditching elemental magic in the recent expansion, I feel like white elemental magic has lost its focus, except when it comes to Red Mage. Ironically enough, the thing I typed out above this is actually about the Red Mage question I answered last week. What are your thoughts on this for the game lore? They've just gone from everything that they were using that was astrally aspected to straight up using white magic. Like something that it focuses more on the way that the first manifests light, almost, in a sense. That this astral aspect, or this umbral aspect. I got it backwards all the time. This umbral magic that they're accessing, this light magic that matches stuff that they actually encounter on the first. So it's not that it's really gone away. And also, some of the spells that we've gotten are actually quintessential white magic spells from previous Final Fantasies as well. Glare isn't, but Dia more specifically isn't. We still have Holy, which has always been my favorite one. And then the Afflaciuses, of course, being entirely umbrally aspected, white magic. I don't think it really has any implications on the game lore. Because first of all, they're the ones writing the game lore. So if they say it makes sense, it just makes sense. Unless there's like a major problem with the way that the events they tell it line up and the way that we perceive it lines up. Then you get Red Shirt Guy, and we got FanFest coming up, so we could always do with a Red Shirt Guy. But I don't think there are any thoughts to have on this, because it just is what it is. It's still all white magic. It's just no longer stone arrow And water, although technically they still have the water spell, it's all been fully aspected towards Umbral, just this light magic, this pure light magic that's coming out of them. But that is going to be the last question that I am able to answer for this week, because it's the last question to answer for this week. And thank you for your questions this week. If you have one, be sure to ask it in the comment section of the video below. Thank you again to our patrons and everyone who tunes in for Mondays with Mr. Happy this week. Reminder again, will not be here Tuesday, Wednesday, and then Thursday we will have a live stream for the live letter. I will be doing a YouTube video, and we will have State of the Realm. Sly says he wants to do it on Thursday. He'd strike while the iron's hot. We'll see how that decision goes, because I'd really prefer to do it Friday. But if I have to do it Thursday, I'll do it Thursday, and then that means State of the Realm will be on YouTube on Friday. And we'll have all the shows again for the next, like, 6-7 weeks planned out already. So there will be a weekly show again for at least the next 2 months, and probably longer. But thank you for watching this episode of Mondays with Mr. Happy. I will see you in the next one. Until then, take care.